What is going on, Headliner Nation? You can see I'm not alone. I'm joined by the good doctor, Ethan Turner, back in the house. And why is that? Well, NFL Week 1 is right around the corner, so we have some injuries to talk about. And Ethan's going to be here each and every week throughout the season doing this for you. And Ethan, we got a few big-name guys out there this week that a lot of people are wondering about whether they should put them in their lineups or not.
Yeah, this is peak football season right here. You're going to have this every week, so you might as well tune in now.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of big names, and the first one we're going to get into, we're going to start off at the running back position. It's going to be David Montgomery of the Chicago Bears. Now, he got hurt, a few weeks ago, and a lot of people kind of expected him to miss the beginning part of the season, but technically he hasn't been ruled out yet. What do you see, coming down this week for David Montgomery?
Yeah, Montgomery's dealing with a groin strain. We saw the video. His foot slipped out, has an adductor strain, which is on the inside, basically one of the inner hip muscles. When you're dealing with a groin strain, it really does depend on kind of how you feel that day. But typically, you're going to see a 2 to 4 week time frame. He's kind of pushing it to make it back this week. He is still limited in practice, but he's getting some practice in. So that's good that he is not not participating in practice, because what that tells us is he's not even close. So I do think he is close. I think the team is probably going to take the safe route here with Montgomery and rule him out closer to Sunday. But I think he could be on track to return in week 2, which when he first got injured, we were not really expecting. We thought this was going to be much more serious. So it's good to see that he actually is going to possibly return as soon as this week, but I'm still predicting more than likely it's going to be week 2 for David Montgomery.
Perfect. Now, if he continues to be limited all week long or just a partial participant, but they don't rule him out, you don't feel comfortable throwing it in your lineup this week, right? This is just somebody you just kind of want to avoid and maybe wait and see for week 2?
Yeah, I typically, if I can avoid it, I will keep him out. So, for example, in my leagues, I'm keeping David Montgomery on the bench this week. Even if he does play, again, when you're talking about a groin strain, hamstring strains, which we'll get into later, the most likely time for them to be re-injured is when they first get back to playing at 100%. So that first snap or that first set of plays, that's when he's the most likely to get hurt. And so I don't like having that kind of risk, especially not in week 1, where I don't want to be, dragged down by the fact that somebody played a series and then put a dud on the board. I want to put points on the board week 1. So I'm going to probably stay away from David Montgomery if I have another option.
Perfect. Next guy is another big name guy that I know I was excited about here this offseason. It's Miles Sanders. This one has kind of been, totally just left in the dark. A few weeks ago, he went week to week, and we're all kind of going, what's going on with Miles Sanders? And everything's kind of hush-hush, but, now we're starting to hear some reports that if he plays, he could be limited. I mean, what do we think about Miles Sanders here this week?
So with Sanders, he's dealing with a hamstring strain. This is pretty common, especially with these guys not having any preseason games. We're going to see a lot of hamstring issues this first week or two. They did list him at week to week, which is interesting. You always want to listen to that verbiage because day to day versus week to week is a totally different time frame. He is practicing, which is good to see. They are optimistic that he is going to play week 1. But my problem is that I think they're going to limit him to start the year. I think he will play, and I think if you drafted Miles Sanders, you're going to have to play him, and you're hoping he scores a touchdown or he gives you, maybe he gives you a big week in the passing game from just a reception standpoint. But I do think you're going to see more Boston Scott than what the team expected to have before this injury. So Boston Scott gets kind of bumped up into that like low end flex range for me. And then Miles Sanders, as opposed to being an RB1, probably looking more at an RB2 week.
Gotcha. What about Alvin Kamara? Now, everybody, myself included, and I will put myself on blast here in this show. I went out in a video or something a few weeks ago and said, hey, they're reporting that he had an epidural. And then you kind of yelled at me in our private Slack chat. You're like, dude, just talk to me before you say things. I thought I was just reporting common, sense news. Apparently, I don't know what the difference is between what an epidural is and what he really had. But what about Kamara heading into week 1? Is he good to go?
Yeah, I do think he is going to be good to go. He is practicing again. He did not have an epidural, or not at least not a true epidural. He had an SI joint injection, which is very different than an epidural. He is practicing, like I said, dealing with some low back pain. This isn't a super uncommon issue for these guys to get an SI joint injection. What the SI joint is basically just where the wings of your hips attach on your sacrum. That's your sacroiliac joint. So it's that point basically where the wings of your hip attach to that tailbone. So
is that where the dimples are?
What'd you say?
Is that where the dimples are on the lower back?
For some people, yes.
Okay, I'm just trying.
Anatomical positioning gets a little tricky, but yeah, for the most part, think of your low back on your tailbone, just off to the sides. That's where your SI joint is. I'm not worried about this. I was telling people that we're drafting, maybe you bump him down a spot or two. Maybe you take a guy like Derrick Henry over Kamara, even if you had him, pretty close. But it's not like you're sending Kamara to the second or third round in a draft. I don't think you can treat it the same way. Had he had a true epidural, that would be much more concerning. But for me, I think Alvin Kamara is going to be fine. I'm okay with starting him this week and being pretty confident that he's going to be an RB1.
Perfect. All right, let's move on to the wide receiver position, because here lately there's been some names popping up that people weren't expecting. On the top of the list is Mike Evans. He's all of a sudden, showing up on the top of injury reports and not practicing, and people are starting to freak out because for a lot of people, he may be their wide receiver 1 or 2, depending on how heavy running back they went early. How do we feel about Mike Evans?
Mike Evans is a little concerning because he got a hamstring strain. It's a week of, which is never what you want to see. Again, I mentioned earlier, those early the most likely time that they're going to re-injure is when they first start to run again. And so time really is of the essence with this. I'm hoping Mike Evans can get a limited practice in by the end of this week. But if he can't practice, we can't trust him to play this week. I think the team has some incentive to play him, given that this is a big game, big week. It seemed crazy. We're already talking about big games. It's week 1.
Week 1.
But this is the Saints, this is a big game for Tampa, for that offense. It would be a big blow to lose Mike Evans, but I think we will know hopefully by Saturday if he is going to be good to go or not. And again, with studs like Evans, you're probably not going to have a better option coming off the bench. You're going to have to start him. And so if he's playing, you play him. But I'm going to say this is probably going to be a game time decision. I mean, we're talking Sunday morning. You better be paying attention because he could be a late scratch and you're going to be scrambling if you're not paying attention.
So let's just say, hypothetically, you had a Marquise Hollywood Brown on your bench and, Evans is limited he's a game time decision. Is a Hollywood Brown somebody you would think about throwing in there for him, or is he just a little bit too far down the list? You'd rather take your chances with a Mike Evans?
I would say that would be pretty close. I think you're giving up a lot of floor with Marquise Brown. I'm not sure exactly how that Ravens offense is going to look this year. I know they're going to run a ton, but I don't know who is commanding the targets. I'm probably going to stick with Evans there, but I think it's close.
Okay. What about Deebo? Deebo broke his foot a few weeks back, and now all of a sudden there's a chance that he could play here in week 1, and the San Francisco 49ers desperately need help at the wide receiver position. What about Deebo? What's going on with him?
Yeah, so Deebo's dealing with a Jones fracture. Typically, you're looking for 10 weeks of recovery time. So he actually is going to try to return at 12 weeks, which actually is really good for his outcomes. The question is, when's he going to practice? Because he hasn't practiced yet. Didn't get a full practice in on Wednesday. I've said all along I expected them to sit him for probably the first 2 weeks, but at least this first week, I just don't think he's going to be ready. This San Francisco team is going to be hurting for wide receivers. Big George Kittle week coming. Brandon Ayuk actually is also dealing with a hamstring injury, and he is not practicing either. So they're going to be short 2 wide receivers more than likely this Sunday. And so, wheels up for George Kittle, I guess.
Hashtag Kendrick Bourne season.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
All right, what about Jalen Reagor? We just talked about Miles Sanders and the Eagles, but Jalen Reagor is somebody who, when he went down, a lot of people's hopes and dreams were crushed because so much offseason hype with Jalen Reagor. But now things are coming out that look like there's a possibility that he could actually play here in week 1.
Yeah, Rager's dealing with a small labral tear. He is going to put a brace on that, and it's going to limit his mobility a little bit. But of course, Rager wins with speed. So the fact this is an upper body injury makes me a little less concerned about it. It could get worse as the season goes on. That's the biggest concern. My biggest worry is that he lands wrong and then it gets worse and then he has to opt for surgery. That's not ideal. The fact that they didn't put him on the short-term IR, which is new this year, for those of you that didn't know, the IR is now 3 weeks as opposed to 8 weeks missed. So you're going to see a lot of players end up on the IR that you wouldn't in previous years, but they chose not to do that with Reagor, which tells me they expect him back in this first 3 weeks. And based on the reports coming out of practice, he is looking pretty crisp. And so I think there's a pretty good chance that Reagor plays this week. I'm not like jumping on board to start him immediately, but I definitely think that he is going to be playing sooner than we expected, which is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I don't think he immediately goes in the lineup either. I think it's just one of those things where him not missing time is a benefit to how he could start performing here in the coming weeks. I mean, he needs to be out there on the field and getting these snaps and getting this opportunity. So that'd be great if he's back. What about Brandin Cooks? A lot of people coming into this year like, man, I just don't trust Brandin Cooks because of concussions. Now all of a sudden, it looks like there's a chance that Brandin Cooks may not play here in week 1, and a lot of people are going, see, I told you the dude just never stays healthy, but it's such a good situation for him in Houston and a great matchup going up against Kansas City. Does he play or not?
I'm going to go out on a limb here and do a little prediction. I don't think Brandin Cooks is going to play this week. He is limited in practice. He's been limited most of the preseason too. They haven't. The problem is that we're finally at the point, thank goodness, that they have to tell us stuff about injuries. In the preseason, there's the teams only tell you what they need you to know. So there are reports that he's been dealing with this quadricep injury. It's some type of strain or contusion. I'm not really sure. The reports haven't officially diagnosed it, but he's dealing with a quadriceps injury, and it's not looking like he's going to play tonight. And so if you're watching this and it's Friday and the game's already happened and Brandin Cooks went off, like, please don't blast me in the comments for this, but I don't expect him to play as of Wednesday night.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it's looking. That's what reports are looking like. But those are a few of the big names that a lot of people are asking questions about. And we said at the opening of the show, right, we're going to do these shows every single week. However, they're going to be dropping here before the weekend. We're going to be doing a live show on Saturday, also Saturday evening. I'm going to make sure that I get whatever information I can from Ethan. Ethan may be on the live streams at times if there's updates. That's just what we're going to do here throughout this season to make sure that you have all the updated information. If you have questions, ask them down below in the comment section. We'll try to get to as many of them as we possibly can. Obviously, if you've been watching any of our videos here over the past few weeks, you can see we're getting like thousands of comments on videos. We can't get to all of them, but we'll try to do our best to help you out to make sure you are in a good position here for your fantasy football season. Ethan, it's week 1. Football's right around the corner. We are super pumped, super excited, and I'm looking forward to having this show go on for the next, 16 weeks or so. How's that sound?
Oh, I'm stoked, man. This is like my favorite time of the year. It's like Christmas all over again. It's great.
Absolutely. Make sure you go follow Ethan on Twitter. His Twitter handle is right there on the screen at eTurnerFF_PT. Follow myself on Twitter also. We greatly appreciate the support. If you enjoy this content, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. You don't want to miss out on anything that we have coming for you here in the regular season. So hopefully you guys have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you later.